What's going on, guys? Welcome to hopefully a decently long-running series called Plutonium Trickshot Academy. It's my name's just fancy because I think it's funny. This is going to be a series where I try to teach some of the newer players, if there are any newer players, of how to trick shot on BO2 specifically, because I'm not great at the other ones. I'm alright, but not too good. And I'm not even like the best BO2 trick shotter on this game, but I would say I have been doing it a long time and know enough to at least get you guys started, and hopefully I will progress the series to more advanced stuff as I learn in order to teach you guys. This is kind of the first episode, so we're going to start with something really simple, and that's just how to actually hold the controller and timing and stuff like that, because it's kind of how you need the trick shot. It's the physical aspect of it is your hands. So with that out of the way, first I'm just going to show you guys the layout that I'm going to have most of the time. This episode might be a tiny bit different. Okay, so you guys should be seeing on the bottom left, you have the Xbox and the PS4 controllers. I'm doing that mainly because I think most tutorials now, the main tutorial series that used to exist was from this guy named Infrared68. He unfortunately doesn't really do anything in the COD community anymore or anything on YouTube, but if you were around back in the day, he was like the guy to go do BO2 tutorial, trickshot tutorials for. He taught you literally everything, and he was sort of the inspiration of where this is coming from. I'm going to try to modernize it as best as I can and also make it a bit easier to learn. One of the main things when it comes to the tutorials, there's no overlay, and sometimes it's hard to understand what the buttons are supposed to look like. So these two controllers down here are going to let you know, like, if I'm doing something that's has really tight timing, you can see the timing as best as you possibly can just to understand what buttons you're supposed to hit and how fast you got to hit them. Now, don't worry about my gun. It has custom camo on it. That doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect your gameplay at all. I'm going to run through some settings that you should probably run as you're learning, just so it's easier and a bit more simpler, I would say. And then I'll get into how to hold a controller. We'll get into all that. So in terms of graphics, run whatever works for your computer. This game is really old. Like, this game, it's 11 years old now, right? Or coming out 11 years. It's been out for 10 years. It's a long time. So if you're playing on a really old, like an older laptop from like maybe 2016, 2017, chances are it probably can't run. So you don't really, like, I would say, I'll leave the Plutonium link in the description just so you can go check it out and how to download it. It's free. Getting BO2 allegedly is free. You can look it on the website. I would say give it a crack. Just try it. If you don't have access to a computer, you may or may not have heard of Serenity. Serenity is like the console Plutonium that exists. But I know console BO2 is kind of busted right now and you really can't play it as well. So I would suggest coming to Plutonium if you can, and I think it's a lot better because of the server browser. You don't need just a trick shot. There's TDM servers, there's just vanilla servers, there's like zombie servers even too that you can play multiple, like 8 people zombies. There's a lot of stuff in Plutonium. It's really cool. But I'm just going to get into some settings that you need to have. Not necessarily need, but are better to have. That would be your FOV and your that's a main one right here. I play at 70, which I didn't really know. I thought it was at 65. I would say do 65 if you can, because that's probably the console equivalent. But 70 is fine. Anything between 65 and 70 is probably where you want to be. Reason why FOV matters is because the higher FOV, the higher you spin. So if I crank it all the way up to 120 here, you see I spin like 10 times faster. Now, if you may want to do that, that's up to you. I wouldn't, because the kill cams look awful. I would say stick at 70. You spin them slower, but it's easier to grasp. So I would say start there. If you really want to try 120 FOV, I'm not going to stop you. It's obviously your pick. But yeah. Also, I am using a mod menu just for this stuff if I need to. It's not like anything that works online. It's just a private match one. FPS, you want to cap it at 60. A lot of the tricks in this game are like frame perfect or almost frame perfect. So the higher the FPS, the more tighter the timing is. So if there's something that you need to hit on a certain frame of an animation, let's say for the when we get into and call knacks, those are frame perfect. So the higher the FPS, that's a smaller and smaller timing as it gets higher to hit that, because you have to hit a certain button at a certain time for it to work. So I would say stick to 60, and it's probably the easiest to work on. It looks fine. Again, if your computer isn't running the game very well, you can't get it past 60. Well, what's the point? You know what I mean? And also in your controls, obviously sensitivity, you probably want it to be at 14. If you play at a higher FOV and you think the spinning's too fast, but you really want to keep the FOV for some reason, turn your sensitivity down, I guess. But I would say keep your FOV at between 65 and 70, and keep your look sensitivity at 14, and FPS capped at 60. That's three main settings you want to keep. And that's probably your best start. That's what I'm going to be working on. It's going to be using for the entire series of this, however long it gets. And yeah. So now I'm going to work on timing. So I'm going to take away the controllers because they're not really necessary for this, because this matters actually more on how you hold the controller. All right. Now I'm going to get into how you hold the controller, because there's two main ways to hold it. One is better than the other, and I'll get into the reason why. I actually hold it the worst way, but I've trick-shotted for so long that I've kind of adapted it to kind of work both ways. So I kind of use both, but I'll get into what those are. The main one that if anybody tells you you want to learn trick-shotting, what you should do is play claw. Now, what is claw? All you're doing is taking your index finger and it's what you're hitting your buttons with. All right. So when you're spinning, you use your right thumb as your normal, and you do everything you need to do here, which you do use buttons quite a bit. Mainly, you obviously need this to jump. This is for reloading, and this does other stuff as well. This is also a really important button, your triangle button, depending on if you want to crouch, or if you play a tactical layout, which is something I can also show really quick. Something that was really popular in trick shotting. Okay, you can sort of see it because it only matters for B and your crouch button that they switch. So your melee by default is your right stick, but playing tactical, it switches that and your crouch button, so now you actually knife with B. This was very popular when I was around. This was a popular playstyle. I didn't play it personally. I played by just default. I didn't really care that much. That's up to you. Obviously, if I say, okay, knife, and they say knife with this, but you use this to knife, that's on you. Works the same. But claw is the main one, and that is because when you want to use this D-pad, which we will use eventually, when you're playing the other method, which I'll show you in a second, this becomes a lot harder because you can't actually, this thumb won't be available to do this. But I will be trying to teach both methods as best as I can. I don't play claw like at all, but I do like hold it when I need to do a lot of things, because, and I'll just explain why. It's something I've sort of become to do. Not necessarily something. There's something called octopus, which kind of is like using the second method and claw at the same time. But yeah, so claw is the first method. I would say if you can, try to learn using this, because it is just better. But if you think this just hurts too much, and which was the case for me, because when I started trick shotting I was probably like 10 or 11, and my hands did not fit the Xbox 360 controller, so it just became very difficult and I couldn't really get it down. This was just too much for me to try to do. Still is. So if you can't do it, that's fine. I'll show you another method, which is called stretch or crossover, and that is where we take our left thumb and use our right stick, and that's how we spin. And then we just use our right hand as normal. Now this is honestly it's a bit easier, but it comes with some caveats, which is this left half of the controller right here becomes inusable because you don't have any way to hit it, unless you really want to try to do this, but this is like not a thing at all, so I'm not even gonna promote that. But I will again be teaching both. This is how I trick shot. This is how I've been trick shotting for the last 10 years, 9-10 years, anytime I've been doing it. It's not the best. I will admit this is not the best method, but it's probably easier to hold and easier to understand. So maybe if it is all right for you, you can start here, and once you understand some basic trick shotting stuff, move the claw and see if you can do both. If you can do claw, you're fine, because you'll find everything a lot like just easier to do in terms of you don't need to struggle. Because what happens is we will get into things where you do need to play claw. Like, it's impossible to do holding this position, so you will need to literally play and then do this for like half a second for one move of some kind, and then have to switch back. So that's why I say get in the habit of at least holding this and understanding and be able to hit a couple buttons. Because this does not allow for certain things like this, which is a select fire swap, which I'll get into how to do all that later video. That is the main two ways you hold it. So I'll just go over it again. We have claw. Claw is using your index finger to hit these buttons. You use your right thumb to spin, jump, whatever, like that. And then you have stretch, which is I'll show you really quick, which is this. And that's how that works. So now I'm going to get onto something that you need to understand. I'll keep the hand cam on just for this video, just so you can see me holding the positions. But after this episode, you'll most likely not see that. I'll use my face cam if there is one. But if the hand cam is better, I can always do this because it's not too difficult to hold. Just a bit awkward for me, just because I gotta like hold it on top, and I usually play under the desk. But yeah. Alright. So, when I say timing, what I'm talking about is your spins. And a lot of people that I have a couple of friends that I'm trying to also teach, and this is kind of why I started doing this, is that they just find timing really hard. Like they'll try to go for a shot and they'll just shoot completely off the space of the earth, and they're not shooting anywhere they're supposed to be. And it's just something that comes with a lot of practice, but there is sort of drills or methods to assist yourself. Mainly what you're going to find is that as you do this more, you'll get better at it, and you'll understand, okay, it becomes more of a natural habit rather than something that you're like purposely doing, and you'll just start naturally doing it. But I remember some famous old school learning how to trick shot videos always said sit in Nuketown and look at one of the mannequins and figure this out. So what I mean by timing is that you want to understand how to time your 360s as best you can. Now see, I'm not even perfect at it, but you can see I'm almost spinning like in the same direction every time while I'm on max sensitivity. Right? So you want to understand how to time your 360s because trick shotting is all spinning, right? As you're trick shotting, you're spinning. And you want to be able to shoot in the preferred direction. So if like this is a certain shot that's on this map, if I wanted you start here facing this way and you want to end up looking that way. So if I wanted to do that, I want to be able to spin and be able to shoot that way anytime I want, almost, right? So that is what I mean, that you need to understand timing. You need to time your 360s the best you can. So if you really want to practice this, you can either just play the servers as is and just work on it specifically as you want. But if you're really, really new and this is like the first time you've ever picked up a controller to do this, just go into a private match, because Plutonium allows private matches, obviously. Specifically, go into Nuketown, find a dummy or just a spot, and just do this for like a couple minutes. You don't need to do it honestly very long, but just sit here doing it. I'm not even doing anything fancy with the controller yet. I'm just holding it as you normally would playing any other game. And then once you're comfortable doing at least a 360, you try to get into a 720 or add more spins in as many as you can. If you like, it's like I'm not even like it's all practice. I'm not even really that good at it, but you'll see that with time it comes a bit easier. And you want to understand timing because you're not going to shoot on, right? You're going to want a certain spot to shoot at when you're going on these trick shots. So you want to understand the timing And it's really important. It's something that maybe people not really think of as much, because the more seasoned people, the people that have been doing it for a couple of years, it becomes an innate habit that they just know how to time their spins. But it's something that, as a newcomer of trick shotting, you may find a lot more harder or a lot more difficult. You might see someone do a trick shot and be like, how the hell did they shoot that right at that person? It's because they practice their spins, or they practice their spins by doing it a lot. But I'm sure they didn't just sit in the Nuketown lobby by themselves for 8 hours doing it. But you do it a lot, it builds. So yeah, that's really it. I'll just show, I guess, the positions one more time and try to combine them. So if you're holding claw, this is how it would be. You'd have your index finger somewhere on here, and just same thing as you're just doing it normally. If you're doing the stretch or the crossover type method, then it just looks like this, and it's the same thing. You know, and then you're just trying to do that. I will say something also people may struggle with is that you may start doing this. You may just start, as you're trying to hold it, you're like move the controller up or you move it down, and you're just not spinning the same spot. So this is, again, something you can do, is just sit here and practice and try to keep it level. If you want to specifically go for this person's head here, if I'm looking at that, try to keep it as best you can, because even with trick shots, there are some times where you are going to start looking sideways and you may look up at the end, right? And that's something you can practice. But I would say to get in the habit of trying to keep it as level as possible and keep it as down as you can. But that's really it. I should put at the start of the video about the description, there is a Discord. I made a Discord. It's not really like the biggest thing ever, and it's not totally put together, but it's good enough that I'm okay with releasing it. I'm hoping that this becomes a bigger thing, but that server won't be specifically just to trick shot, for like trick shot help or teaching or anything like that. It's more of a community thing. It's kind of like VK's and Doja's servers, where you can go in there and just hop in this call with anybody that's playing. If there's enough people and enough want, I may have actual teachers, and if this becomes a really big thing and people are wanting to learn how to trick shot on other CODs, I will obviously make series for those, or ask if there's anybody in the community that wants to do their own type of thing and have it kind of run through my Discord. I doubt that's gonna happen. Also, thank you guys for like I think I've gotten 7,000 views in the last 2 weeks and 100 new subs. I don't know why, but thank you. That's great. But that's really it for episode 1. My next video, episode 2, will most likely focus on equipment stuff, like equipment cancels and the all famous InstaSwap, and we'll get into that. Because InstaSwap is like the foundation of a trick shot, is what I have to call it. At least in BO2, is like the main thing that most trick shots have. And it's something really easy to learn, but something that's like super. Once you know it, you're gonna be like, wow, this is actually so cool, and you'll be able to do everything. But that's it. Thank you for watching if you got here, and I'll see you guys in the next video.